Hey, all right. I was thinking about making this video into two parts, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about DNCs for the first part of the video, and then the second half is going to be about when they don't work. Um, so if you're watching this, um, I guess you might be about to have one. Um, you may have had one and it doesn't seem right, which you'll find the second half of this video interesting then if that's the case. But what I'm going to do is just break down what happens with the DNC. They're pretty common. Like if people choose to have a abortion, um, they'll get a DNC. If you have an incomplete miscarriage, you'll get a DNC, or if you have a miscarriage, you'll get a DNC. Um, so if you watch my previous videos, you'll see I had miscarriage and then the medication didn't work at all. So I had to get a DNC. Um, so um, basically what happens, you come in. I went to John Hunter Hospital for my DNC in Newcastle. Um, I got there at the crack of dawn, like 8 o'clock. Um, normally, I had two of these last year and it was similar. It was a similar sort of process with the lead up to going into surgery. Yeah, they usually get you to get in there pretty early. I think there's maybe like 15. It's about 10, 15 girls that day. Um, I think I was earlier in the list both times. The second time, I'll get to why I was the first one, I think, because I'd had a lot of trauma from the first TNC, which I'll get to in the second half of this video. But yeah, you go in. If there's someone having an emergency C-section, they will put them in before you so you can get bumped back. So I think the first DNC, by the time I got in there, it was about 2:30, and then I was out there by 4:30. So it's like a full day. You can only drink water. Um, Make sure you have a big meal the night before because you're probably going to be in there for most of the day, unless you're really lucky and there's no, you know, emergency C-sections or anything like that push you back. So you're probably going to be pretty hungry. Like I was so ravished and shitty by the time it was to go in. Um, so yeah, they give you a medication to take the morning of your DNC, which I'd spoken about in my previous video. Some women find this medication painful. Some people don't. Well, I didn't find it painful at all. It's like it didn't do anything, but I think it softens your cervix. That's why they give it to you before they go in and do the procedure. Um, so yeah, go in. They put you under general anesthetic. I hadn't had general anesthetic. I think I had it maybe when I was 6 years old and I got my tonsils out. So I hadn't had it for like 33 years. I was really nervous about getting put under. I didn't have a good time getting put under. I couldn't really breathe. But I realized in my second DNC, they put like an oxygen mask on you and they can push it down like really hard. And it's hard to breathe because when you have, I think they gave me fentanyl, pretty common. They give most people fentanyl, I believe, unless you've got an allergy. Um, it's like opiate. So it's sort of like your whole respiratory system becomes sort of depressed, if that's the right word. Like it slows everything down. So like, I think I was having that reaction in my body and I had the oxygen mask on really tight, so I felt like I couldn't breathe. Like I was definitely having like a bit of a panic attack in there. But I thought I actually couldn't breathe. And I have bradycardia, which is like a really low pulse rate. So my heart rate's really low. It's like sits around 50, 40 to 60, super low. I did lots of long distance running, so I put it down to that. Normally it's a good thing, but it can make you a little bit, so I think some of the buzzers were going off too, which didn't help when I was about to go under. But normally you go under. I've had friends that had DNCs. They loved it. Like they loved the feeling of being put under, like the general anesthetic and the fentanyl. Like some people they got no problem going under. I didn't like it. It wasn't a fun time. Anyway, so you go under, woke up, didn't feel any pain, nothing. You've got a pad on. There's a bit of red blood, bit of bleeding. Wait for your blood pressure to go back up, everything. Like, I think the actual procedure only takes like 10-15 minutes. And then, wait maybe an hour post surgery because you're pretty groggy. Like, I was super groggy when I woke up. Like, I didn't know where I was. Um, I also woke up crying. I was really traumatized because I couldn't breathe, but that was just me freaking out, I think. Because I know the second DNC, I just sort of pulled my back a bit so there was a bit of air in that oxygen mask because it can feel quite tight. And then if your respiratory system's kind of already sluggy, like it's sort of depressed, like it's not, it's sort of slowed down and you're trying to breathe, it makes it harder. So that's a good tip. But everyone else I've spoken to that have had DNCs didn't experience that. Most people like went in fine, back to work the next day. Some of those friends wanted to have, they were having an abortion. They didn't want to have kids, so it was a different, set of circumstances for them too. For me, I went in the first time and I was just like, fuck, okay, let's just get this over and done with. And yeah, so that's it. Normally might bleed for a few days. They'll probably get you come back in maybe a week or so, test your HCG levels. So then they know your HCG levels are going up. Your HCG levels, is it human something chloride? I don't know. It's when you wee on the pregnancy sticks, it's that same chemical that tells you that you're pregnant. So they test for that because obviously if there was a fuck up with the DNC and there was retained product in there, they call it retained product of conception, RCO. Right? Anyway, you do the first letter workout thing. They do that to make sure they've got it all. So that's why you go back and get a blood test after you've done a DNC to make sure that they've got all the remains out. So your body still doesn't think it's pregnant. And then normally that's it. Maybe a few weeks for your HCG levels to register, go back down to under 5. Under 5 is considered not pregnant. By the way, your HCG levels can go up to like 150,000 or higher during pregnancy, so they can go really high. Anyway, and then that's pretty much it. But unfortunately, my first DNC, I kept bleeding, so went home, was like, thank God that's done. A week had passed. So John Hunter was supposed to call me 3 weeks after. 3 weeks after the DNC, just checked that everything's all right. Waited 3 weeks, nothing. Then it was 3.5 weeks. I was still bleeding. And I'm like, this doesn't seem right. Like, I'm not spoken to my friends. I'm like, you shouldn't still be bleeding that long after. Went and so I called the nurses up. I was like, no one's contacted me. Is this normal? I'm still bleeding. Was pretty worried that something had gone wrong. And she said to me on the phone, the nurse was lovely, by the way, but she said, oh, look, it sounds like you might have some retained product of conception. I kind of freaked out because I kind of figured that doesn't sound good. Like I've just had this surgery to get rid of it. So anyway, got me in for ultrasound. Sure enough, there was quite a large size piece of, I don't know, placenta, fetus. I don't know. It was a decent chunk. And considering how far along I was, so this is my first miscarriage, it was like, I'd explained in previous videos that it only grown to like 5 or 6 weeks. So it was almost sort of like, what did they do in there? Because the piece was like 2/3 of the size of the thing. And it's like, did they just pop a vacuum in and not do anything? Like, it was like, what the fuck? Like, how can they miss? Like, that's pretty much the procedure, is to get that chunk out. Anyway, ultrasound, yeah, there's a retained product of conception. I kept going back and forth with the hospital at John Hunter. Like, by the way, I was absolutely fucking pissed. Like, I'd done the medication, that didn't work at all. Really rare. Then I'd done this DNC and they fucked it up. They did a bad job. I don't know if they were rushed or what happened, but let me tell you, I was so fucking furious that they'd fumbled my DNC, because it meant I couldn't put this thing behind me. So we're in like May now. So this pregnancy, this miscarriage, had been dragging on for, oh gosh, dragging on for like a good nearly 2 months now. Um, anyway, so went back in, spoke to them. Um, Basically the options for me now was to have it's called a lap. It's basically where they go on with the camera to look for the remains. Which meant going under again, which meant surgery again. Um, and it's, it can be risky because then the risk of them scraping too much and causing scar tissue, which is called Hashimoto's syndrome, and that's one of the complications of a DNC. It's really rare. It's like, I think it's like 1 in 1,000. Like, it's quite rare. Like, that's a real fuck up. They didn't do that, thank fuck. But they did a really shitty DNC. Anyway, so when you get this, it's a laparoscopy. I want to say laparoscopy. Anyway, they go in and do that. And I'd spoken to like, by the way, at this point, I put in a complaint because there was no follow up call. I wasn't explained the procedure very well. What? Oh, that thing just came up. That weird thumb thing. I don't know. Anyway, no follow up call like they were supposed to. I didn't have a good time going under. No one explained what it felt like. I didn't know what I was in for. Um, I was just really upset. I was really hurt. I was really pissed off. There was a few other things too. There was some from the get go, like came in there, was specifically told the day before my DNC to get a blood test. That's right. And I had to go to this specific place John Hunter said to get the blood test. It had to be a day or 2 days before. So I did that. And then the day I came for the DNC, they're like, oh, you got to get a blood test. And I'm like, no, I've done it. It's the same one. And they said, no, we have to do them here. There was just constant fucking breakdowns in communication with their staff. It's a big hospital. So anyway, so my two options were post the DNC, get another invasive surgery with the camera where they can see, where the piece is that they didn't get out the first time. Which I wasn't feeling, I was a little bit gun shy about considering they fucked up the DNC. Or just wait. And I said to them, like, well, what's the research say? Like, what normally happens in this situation? And they were basically like, look, this doesn't really happen. It's too rare that there's no research on it. And I was like, fuck off. You cannot make this shit up. So what happened was I waited because I did not trust those fuckers to go back, and who knows what else. I didn't want to go back there. So I bled for months. That's how you know it's a failed DNC. So this whole first miscarriage went on from, so I was pregnant in March. And I think it wasn't till late June, early July that I'd actually stopped bleeding. And by the way, I was getting blood tests every week, 10 days. So I was waiting for my HCG levels to drop, because until they drop to under 5, you can't get pregnant again because your body thinks you're pregnant. So because the DNC wasn't successful, I couldn't even try again. I had to wait for nature to take its course after all of the interventions I'd tried, and just absolute shit luck. I've got like a bunch of paperwork from all this. I don't know how I'm going to put it into the videos. I think it will depend, so I've got to blank out my, details and stuff. But anyway, it got worse at John Hunter. So I started, I think it was like maybe 6 weeks or 2 months after the DNC. I remember I had like a massive like chunk came out. And I thought that, it's my body's gotten rid of it. Like, great, cool. So now maybe I can start regulating again. So I went back to John Hunter, got another ultrasound. By the way, that chunk, it was my period. I didn't even think. I just thought my body was, getting rid of it. So it was my period, but it did get rid of parts of it. But I went back I think now, so I did the DNC on March, I think it was no, sorry, May the 10th, I think it was. And now it's like, I think it's early July, I'm pretty sure. And I've gone back in after the sort of chunks came out, which I now know that was my period. And the chunk had gotten, like the retained product for conception had gotten smaller. Um, but it still hadn't completely gone, which is what the ultrasound showed. So I'd had I think I'd had three ultrasounds post the DNC, and they all said retained products of conception because that's what it was. So I went in, um, you know, I wasn't sure how long this was going to take, as in, like, when the hell is my body going to be ready to try again, like try pregnancy again. Um, and I spoke to this male doctor there, and he was like, look, I'm really sorry, you've still got retained product of conception. I just started breaking down and crying because I was so fucking over. I was so over it. I just wanted it to end. And then I thought he left the room because I was, like, clearly upset. And I thought he was just giving me some space or whatever to just grieve. Um, that this was actually happening to me. And he came back. He took quite a long time. He came back like 10 minutes later. It was almost like I was on a game show. And he came in and he was like, oh, great news. So it turns out you don't have retained product of conception. And I was sort of like in between Tommy, and I was like, oh, really? And he's like, no. He's like, no, you don't. He's like, in fact, I don't think you ever had it. He doesn't think I ever had it, despite multiple blood tests with my HCG levels being skyrocket, like way high, because I had it. So I had scientific evidence that I had it through my blood work. And I also had several ultrasounds that stated findings of the ultrasound retained product of conception. So now this doctor's telling me I never had it. And I just wanted to get out of there, to be honest. And I said, oh, well, why was I still bleeding? Like, why have I been bleeding for 3 months? And I don't even remember what he said, to be honest. He had another nurse come in with me, and I remember all I wanted to do was to never fucking go back to John Hunter again. And so I said, it's I was like, okay, so we're done, I don't need to come back. And he's like, no, you're done, you don't need to come back. So I got my, paperwork, whatever, and left. And then, I got to my car and I was just thinking about how bullshit that was, because I'd been bleeding for months. The ultrasounds and the blood work all said I had retained product of conception, and he basically lied to me. I won't go as far and say he kind of tried to gaslight me, but he sort of did. And that was my experience of my first DNC. Now, the second DNC I got later in the year, completely different story. I got private healthcare because so when I found out I was pregnant the second time last year, I got private healthcare because I'm like, if I have another miscarriage, I don't want to fucking have another one. But if I do, I'm not going back to John Hunter to have a DNC because what a shit show. I did get private health insurance. Turns out I wasn't quite covered. I think I was like a week. I needed an extra week to wait. And I didn't want to wait an extra week. So I rolled the dice. Like, I was really scared about rolling the dice again at John Hunter, but that's what I did. Went in, told them what had happened last time. I was like, I've had a lot of stuff happen this year. I said, like, I've had, a DNC here a few months ago, which was not done properly. Anyway, like, I made it very clear that I was fucking traumatized and you need to do your job properly. Do not let me fall through the cracks again for my second DNC here, because and also I'd put in a formal complaint, by the way, for the first DNC and all the fuck ups at the hospital. So they kind of like, I don't know if they knew who I was, but I know that I spoke to the head of, whatever that section was, several times. And this is after the first run of instances at John Hunter. Like, I really fucking went hard because I was like, fuck this. So the second time when I went back for my second DNC, whole different story. The lady that did my anaesthesis, because I had the freak out the first time I went under, thinking I couldn't breathe, she actually came down and explained everything to me about how it works, put me at ease. when I went up to get my surgery. By the way, so this time I was first on the list. I'm pretty sure I was first or second, like real quick. I was there a lot. I was there a lot quicker. I was still there for a lot of the day, but I think I got in pretty early at like maybe 12. I got in. Um, that was super lovely and attentive, like they should be. When you're there, getting that kind of thing done because you're not having the best time if you've got to be there. But it was very different, and I remember the surgeon. She was like, "We've even gone to get the like I don't know. Sometimes public hospital, sometimes the machines you got to do what you can." But she's like, "No, we're waiting to get the extra good." Was it the ultrasound machine? So that because it's guided ultrasound when they do D&Cs. And I remember thinking to myself, I bet they didn't have that when they did it the first time. Anyway, did it. Amazing. Stopped bleeding after 3 days. Um, and it was done. HCG levels went back down real quickly. I think, a few weeks to a month after the D&C, my HCG levels were back down to 0, which means I could try and start getting pregnant again. So two very, very different outcomes and experiences for the same procedure at the same hospital, but that is public healthcare for you. But at least the second one worked. I feel like I'm definitely missing stuff. Oh, that's right. That was another thing they told me because I was still bleeding so long in the first one. They were like, no baths, no sex. There was a list of things I couldn't do for months. And then I went and paid to see a private gynecologist, and I told her what was happening, and she's like, no, why can't you do some of those things? So just double check things sometimes. Unless you have, look, I'm not a gynecologist, but I'm just telling you my experiences. But my gyno said to me, why can't you have sex? You can still do those things. I didn't have an infection. I think that's why the hospital was like, don't do these things for months, because they were scared that I would get an infection because I was still bleeding. I was bleeding for so long. But you kind of know if you're going to get like you can kind of tell. And yeah, so yeah, it was, it nearly sent me crazy. Just the constant bleeding for months. It was fucked. Um, I would really love to know how many women out there have had a D&C gone wrong. Um, and what your experiences was like, how you dealt with it. I just remember feeling like I wanted to throw myself through a glass paling. Like I remember I wanted to throw myself through a window because I felt so frustrated and hopeless and helpless. Like there was why nothing was working. It was such a fucking it was so bullshit. It was such a tough ride and nothing seemed to be working. It was making me feel crazy. It felt like I had some fucking curse or something on me. Just this anyway, if you're watching this and this has happened to you, then you will know exactly what I'm talking about. But anyway, got through it, and I think that's pretty much it for the D&Cs. Yeah. I could do another video about HCG levels, um, with pregnancy and when to know you're good to go again, but I might save that for another video because I think this has been pretty long. But yeah, that was a big one. And it feels really good to be talking about this because, some of these experiences were over 12 months ago. And I didn't think I was ready to talk about them then. I would have been too emotional. I was too like, I was too raw and I would have been way too spicy with my commentary where I've calmed down a lot now, because I've healed a lot of that bullshit that I went through. And I feel like now's the time to make these videos because I'd always wanted to make these videos for women. And so now I'm doing it. And I hope they are helpful. And I'm sure I've missed lots of things. So if I have, comment and I will try and respond to you with the information if I've got it. Okay. All right. Hopefully that's been helpful to someone. And I'll see you in the next video. I haven't decided which area I'm going to do next, but hopefully these are helping someone. Okay. Thanks.